I know it seems like the Chiefs are always in the Super Bowl, but before we put them back there in 2025, we're going to talk about some teams that have a chance to dethrone them in the AFC. We'll do that and more today here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
There's no doubt that it is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On NFL podcast, where we always have an esteemed guest. Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers is here on Thursdays as usual, and then we'll use clips from around the National Football League to talk about the latest big stories from around the league. Today, our show is focused on teams in the AFC that have a chance to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I can't mention every team, so if I don't mention your team, don't get all upset. It's okay. It's all right. I ain't gonna get this. Ain't Coach Prime. I ain't gonna get mad if you don't believe, and I don't want you to get mad at me if we don't believe. But we're gonna talk about the Texans, the Steelers, who Chris covers, the Chargers, the Bills, and the Ravens. Those are the teams that we're going to focus on. But Chris, we're going to kick this off and start talking about Kansas City first and their schedule. Let's get right to it. I'm going to play Chris Clark talking about the gauntlet of the schedule that they have as the team that won the AFC.
Chiefs start the season tough, and if you want to get to the home opener against the Eagles for the rematch, you better get to game time. The front half of this particular schedule, this particular year, is a gauntlet. You get the Bills. You get the Commanders. You get the Eagles. It's going to be a tough one to get started with, and the Chiefs are going to have to fight through that to get to, luckily, their Week 10 bye. They do that, and they're going to have a chance at running the back half, which has 3 out of the last 4 games that are going to decide the AFC West division. There's going to be a lot of talk about who can challenge them this season. The truth is everybody's fighting for second place, but they got to play strong in December. A lot's going to go into it. Those are the 2 stretches this season that are going to be crucial. Make sure you go download Game Time if you want to get to those games, and make sure that you're ready for this season by watching Locked On Chiefs.
Boy, the Chiefs, man, they're a confident bunch, man. They just feel like, and they got every right to be, Chris. But they do have the benefit of not having to play the first place schedule of the team that wins the NFC North, because that, to me, always involves Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. We ain't gonna say nothing about Cleveland, and that's what always makes it hard for Baltimore or Pittsburgh, whoever wins that division.
It can be tough. Yeah, it can be tough when you get that, when you get there. But yeah, I mean, if you're the Chiefs, why wouldn't you be confident? I mean, they've made 3 straight Super Bowls, and they've made 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. Like, that's approaching LeBron level insanity. And like, and it's tough to see, like, will that reign end? Because they still got Patrick Mahomes, still got Chris Jones, still got that defense, got Trent McDuffie. Like, they got guys to be those guys for some more years. But the thing is that you got to wonder, when does the league start to catch up? When does everyone else start to make the adjustments? Because, you know, even the Patriots, like, people think the Patriots dominated and were just the best team in football for 20 years because of the times that Tom Brady won. The Patriots were a completely different team when they won their first 3 Super Bowls, and it took them a decade to win their next set of Super Bowls. So before they even won another Super Bowl after that first 3. So, you know, it took them some time, and they were always very good, but teams caught up to them and figured out ways to counter what they were doing, like the Broncos, when you think back to Von Miller and Elvis Dumervil and Peyton Manning and all the stuff that they were doing there. But I think that's what you're trying to look at. If you're looking at all the teams on the Chiefs schedule here, this early part of the season, you're hosting the Chargers. The Chargers I think are not going to be a joke. I think that they're a team that's building the right way. They're going to be challenging for stuff. We'll get to them. Eagles come up next, then you get the Ravens 2 weeks after that. And then you get the Lions 2 weeks after that. They're right. This is going to be a tough schedule but this is what happens when you're the champs. When you keep winning your divisions, you keep playing tough competition. The Chiefs are built for it. I'm going to be interested to see how well can the Chiefs survive some of the bad luck injuries that other teams have. Like, what happens if they lose Mahomes for a month at some point? What happens if, like, several key defenders get popped out? Because a lot of top teams, that's what happens to a lot of those really good teams that just don't make it sometimes, as their best players go missing. So, I think the Chiefs have been very fortunate on a lot of fronts. And there's sometimes they haven't been. At the Super Bowl they lost to the Bucs, they were missing both their offensive tackles. But we saw what happened in there. What happens if that happens during the season when they're building things and there's actually an AFC West division chasing them? And I think that's one thing that's unique about the Chiefs situation now, is that there's the Broncos and the Chargers are both teams that are trying to rise up in that division right now.
And the Raiders have a coach that's won a Super Bowl too. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be more competent, right? They get John Spytek in there from Tampa to be their GM. They're going to be more competent. I want to switch it up to Baltimore real quick, because I have this. I was a Florida State fan when they were battling Miami back in the 80s and 90s. I was in the military, and I had to tell people, folks are like, "Oh man, them teams ain't that good." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a Florida State fan, but don't talk about Miami. Miami will beat you too." I wonder if Baltimore and Pittsburgh fans think that way. And I'll tell you this, because I always said if I wasn't a Florida State fan, I probably would have been a Miami fan. I'll never be a Gator fan. If you couldn't be a Steeler fan, would you be a Baltimore fan, and vice versa? Because the organizations kind of respect each other, although they hate each other. Chris?
I mean, as a reporter, it kind of takes fandom out of it, right? So, it's less that. I think it's about what styles do you identify with, and if you, and for some people, it's as simple as that's where you were born and raised, and that's what starts it, that's what ends it. But I mean, one thing I think that's where if Steelers and Ravens fans, they look at each other, they look at there's a respect there. I mean, I'll say this about the history, bringing that into the history of the Steelers Ravens rivalry. I remember in the 2000s there was such a hatred. I mean, Hines Ward, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Ben Roethlisberger, Troy Polamalu, those teams fought to the death. Like it was just bloodbaths. I remember Ray Lewis, when they lost for like a third straight time in the playoffs to the Steelers, they were just like, how? He was like, this is ridiculous. And it wasn't until the Ravens got their get back in those early 2010s and they won a Super Bowl. And then after that, even though the Terrell Suggs was still around, there were still stars and studs on both sides of the ball, or both sides of this rivalry, but there was more of a respect. And I think that the Ravens did not feel like as much like the little brother as they feel like for a decade. And they felt like they are more on even grounds than they had been. And so I think that's part of what happens there is now, like for Steelers and Ravens, there is a respect. And you still don't like each other. It's not like fans root for them to do well or anything, but it's all right, well, they're doing that there. So I think that sometimes happens there, and that you can come across that when you do have that back and forth, and especially because there's association, right? Like in the SEC, when SEC teams go to the play, all the SEC in the ACC, I covered Pitt when the ACC was in March Madness. Everybody was rooting for the ACC teams to do well. I think there sometimes there can be a little bit of that, but when when the rivalry is in the heated stage, like we hate you and we don't care nothing about you, like right now, Eagles Cowboys is still on that level. I don't think there's going to be any mix of co-winning between those two franchises that are going to ever fix that hatred. They will always root against each other to do well, even when it's like, oh no, it's NFC East versus NFC West. We prefer that. Nah, that ain't happening. So it just depends on the rivalry.
The reason I brought that up, and I'm thank you for that explanation, is because the Ravens seem to do Steeler things and vice versa.
They do.
They really, really, really love to invest in the offensive line. They keep pass rushers, and they draft people with a lot of body work, and they actually value running backs, and that's where I'm going right here. Watch what happens with the Ravens, Derrick Henry.
When you see a guy that committed to his body, that committed to staying healthy and being in the best shape that he can possibly be. You mentioned injuries happen, but Derrick Henry, with everything he does, how much confidence does that give you that over the duration of this deal, he can continue to be peak Derrick Henry?
All the confidence in the world. There is the term you call pros pro. And a pros pro, in my mind, what I've seen over the years, all those guys that have sustained throughout, and whether it be Tom Brady playing until he's 40, or whether it been Jerry Rice, you name it, just the guys that were that Derrick Henry upper tier. We've seen guys play a long time, and they're good. but we're talking upper tier greatness, the likes of a Derrick Henry. It's because they have the talent and they have the wherewithal, professionalism to now mix in the combination of the recovery. He's going out there and he's making sure that he's showing up in practice. He's showing up in the game.
Derrick Henry, I was shocked that there was not more interest from Pittsburgh because I said it's a match made in heaven when he left Tennessee. Do you think that would have fit?
Derrick Henry
to Pittsburgh when he left Tennessee.
Oh, sure. I think the only thing, though, is that Derrick Henry went to the Ravens at a time where their offensive line was more developed and they had Lamar Jackson to kind of mix things up. Like, that's the thing that the Steelers are hoping this year, that their offensive line takes the step forward. So, like, it wouldn't have worked as well. Like if you go to if he goes to the Steelers, sure, he's still Derrick Henry, but with Derrick Henry now you got Tyler Linderbaum leading that O-line up the middle. You got and again, Lamar Jackson makes the offensive line that much better because of his ability to throw, all the things he makes defenses worry about, and then, of course, his legs. And when they can run that option, it's a whole different threat. So, no, it would not have been the same. I think Derrick Henry is a guy, he can find success anywhere, but the success he can find in Baltimore is unique. And it is why they are still a Super Bowl threat so long as him and Lamar Jackson are together.
No doubt about it. Speaking of Super Bowl threats, I ain't even mentioned Buffalo yet. They were the team that really were the biggest threat to the Chiefs. We'll get on that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. They are all in, man. And let me explain. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. So post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write your descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people in deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Running it down here on Locked On NFL with my man Chris Carter here on the Locked On Podcast Network. No mention of the Buffalo Bills. We did a whole segment talking about who's going to dethrone the Chiefs, but yet still the team that was closer to doing that than anybody else, we are now just getting to them. And there's a reason for that. The reason for it is they came out of nowhere last year. Now that Rabbit has the gun, will they come out of nowhere this year? Could they beat Baltimore now on a neutral field? We're going to find out real fast when the season starts. But we all know who the man is in Buffalo, and that is Josh Allen. As long as they have Josh Allen, they got a shot. Check this out.
Trosky, why is Josh Allen the most important player to the future of the Buffalo Bills?
You have to look at it this way, fellas. I mean, you're talking about a player that not very often can you say one man can win a football game alone by himself. And we've seen Josh Allen win games in Buffalo since his career started in Orchard Park many, many times by himself. He's a player that's generational. He is an amazing and might be the best athlete that we've seen at that quarterback position. Huge arm and an unbelievable asset for the Bills. And honestly, just arguably the best.
Listen, man, you get greatness sometimes, but they're with other great people. You got King Griffey Jr., but he came along during Barry Bonds, right? Michael Jordan, and you can say Charles Barkley was the greatest player he played against that couldn't win because he was there. Mario Lemieux, he had to be in the shadows of Wayne Gretzky. Are we getting to that point?
Oh, no, you take that back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I forgot who I was. You know everything I do is on purpose.
Shadows.
I knew I was gonna wake you up, man. There you go. All right, but look, the point is sometimes you can live in the shadows. Is Josh Allen to the point where he's living in the shadows? Because Lamar Jackson doesn't seem to get this pass that Josh Allen gets for not being able to beat somebody, right? Is he living in the shadows of Patrick Mahomes or because everybody thought he wasn't going to be that good and he turned out to be this great people are just forgetting about that part of it.
See, I don't know if people didn't like Josh Allen was one of my top quarterbacks that year when he came out of the draft. Him and Lamar Jackson were my top two. Like everyone was talking about Josh Rosen and all these other guys. I was like, nah, them two dudes, they can run, they can throw, they can ball. They're going to be problems. But I don't know. I do think it's odd that we do not have the Josh Allen discussion like we have the Lamar Jackson discussion.
See, yeah,
because Lamar Jackson has gotten to maybe Josh Allen's gotten to one more AFC championship game than him, or maybe it's the same amount. I forget which, but either way, neither of them have been to a Super Bowl. And so, like, what are we doing here? And they were drafted in the same year. And, and Josh Allen is a 7th overall pick. Lamar Jackson was bottom of the first round. Now, maybe it's because Lamar Jackson's been a 2-time MVP. Josh Allen just won an MVP, and he won it over Lamar Jackson, what was a close contest there. And maybe that plays into it. Like, I didn't see the Bills as coming out of nowhere this year. I thought it was more so like this was since 2019. They have won double-digit games every single season. So that's 6 years in a row of doing that. And that's since Josh Allen became the guy. And so clearly he brings that value. And I agree with the comments there that he's one of those guys that could be the guy that carries the team more than anyone else. But here's the thing, Lamar Jackson is the same thing, man. They got Derrick Henry. Now, Lamar Jackson has not had a receiver on the level of Stephon Diggs in his prime that Josh Allen has had.
Never.
And that's where I think that if you gave Lamar Jackson that kind of a receiving threat, who is just one of the best receivers in the NFL, not a good receiver, not a very good, but one of like the top tier guys, I think Lamar Jackson would destroy people. And so, and that's not to put down Josh Allen, because I think he's amazing too. I just look at it and I do think it's odd that he doesn't catch the flack that Lamar Jackson gets. And I do think he's living in the shadow of Patrick Mahomes, because again, Patrick Mahomes has been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls.
That's a lot.
And so it's been that kind of dominance. And the one year it was Joe Burrow who took it from him, not Josh Allen, not Lamar Jackson. So yeah, if you have not been in the Super Bowl in an era when you have been this MVP level quarterback, because that's the thing here is that, like, it's not like this is Justin Herbert we're talking about, or Trevor Lawrence we're talking about. Like, these are 2 guys in the MVP conversation every year for the last 6 seasons, and they ain't sniffed a Super Bowl yet. That does feel like living in the shadows, and that's something that I feel that dam has to break. Like that this can't continue that much longer.
For somebody got to break it.
Exactly. Somebody has to break through. And so the question I ask is, who is building their team to stop what the Chiefs do better? And personally, right now, I feel like it's the Ravens, and it's less about Lamar Jackson, about what they're doing with that defense. I love their draft additions of Malachi Starks, of Mike Green. If Starks could come in and be a young safety pair with Kyle Hamilton, that could solve the big thing that really hurt the Ravens, was passing deep over the middle. They could get crushed there. Now, if you put that together, and they still have the pass rush, and they still have that O-line, and they still have Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson still playing at an MVP level, I can see that being enough to take out the Chiefs. I also think the Bills have stuff that they're building as well. I just think that what the Ravens are doing, I see that as more compatible to take what Kansas City's doing on.
You know what? There's another team with a real good quarterback that at least up to now has gotten a pass. But unlike the Bills and unlike the Ravens, he almost has an excuse because he had a poor coach. Doesn't have a poor coach anymore. And they have a different motivation. When I was talking about the Eagles yesterday, and I was having this discussion with David Harrison, the Washington Commanders and the Cowboys were 2 teams that I talked about. And their desire to undo the Eagles is a little bit different because they're right in the division, just like this team I'm about to mention when you talk about the Chiefs. And ironically, listen to who they mention when they talk about their fortunes.
Taking down the Chiefs to start the 2025 season, making a major statement. And that is another thing that I think the Chargers are going to have more success with this year, is beating some of the better teams in the league. And they're going to have to if they want to get back to the playoffs in 2025.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would see the 11-win number and think, okay, so the Chargers aren't getting any better. But I think if you're looking at these teams being as good as we think that they are, which I believe is 9 games they have this year against playoff teams from last year, they would have to be a substantially better team in 2025 to hit 11 wins. And not only that, they would have to beat some really good teams along the way.
So the Chargers, they're this team for a long time. The way we talked about Josh Allen, that's exactly the way that I talked about Justin Herbert. Now, Justin Herbert doesn't have any excuse anymore. And they've added some offensive firepower to their defense. To their offense this year. And Amarion Hampton. And, of course, they got a wide receiver in the second round out of Ole Miss, who's a very, very good player, Trey Harris also. Do you think the Chargers have done enough to start chipping away at the Kansas City Chiefs?
I think that they've done enough to be competitive. I think that the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, they have an interesting mix here, and they have a unique mix here that can be different. They have built the offensive line. They've been drafting high at offensive tackle. They got Joe Alt and they got Rashawn Slater, who I think could be an amazing pair for several years to come. Now they've added the running backs. They've got Najee Harris and Amarion Hampton both on reasonable contracts, so you're not overpaying the running back position. I do think they need some better receivers if they're going to be this superstar offense, but this could be an offense that plays that plays physical football with a really good quarterback, and that style could be a thing that contrasts with what the Chiefs try to do, because the Chiefs, I think they're a team that's built to be an all-around really good defense. Right. If you can be a team that can be more physical with them, and then the quarterback takes advantage of when they try to be aggressive, that could be a thing that gets you over the top there. But they got to prove it. And Justin Herbert, like you said, he's gotten that pass because Brandon Staley was his coach, and Brandon Staley was objectively a bad coach. Jim Harbaugh, I think, is putting things in the right way. He's helping fix the culture there. I've always had this thing, man, since I was a kid. I don't care what you sell me, I'm not believing in the Chargers. Since I was like 10 years old, I've been told that LaDainian Tomlinson, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, you name the superstar on the Chargers, he was going to lead them to the promised land, and it never happens. They still have never been to the Super Bowl. And so, so when I look at that, I think I cannot trust the Chargers, but I do like the roster construction. I do think there's a chance this could be the different time for the Chargers to charge up and to be that team. But they got to be consistent. They got to come out, and I think being that physical team, if they can grasp that identity and not lose their edge on defense, they can be that team that causes problems for the Chiefs. And this is the other part we're talking here, right? All these different teams that could challenge the Chiefs. There's so many different teams coming for them that are building up, and I think building well. So it's not like in the prime Patriots years when you had the Dolphins winning 5 games a year, the Bills winning 4 games a year, and the Jets winning 3 games a year. And it's just like, well, they won the division because no one else can play football in that division. Right. I think there are people coming for the Chiefs, and there's organizations putting good talent together.
Stan Humphries in 1995 took the Chargers to the Super Bowl, but you're right, they weren't there because the 49ers ran all over them, right? Didn't they beat the Steelers? I thought they beat Pittsburgh to get there too, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. You won't get mad at me today with all of this slander about all.
The Chiefs beat the Steelers, or the Chargers beat the Steelers?
The Chargers. Didn't the Chargers back in 95 get blown out by the 49ers?
No, the Chargers beat Bill Cowher's Steelers in the AFC Championship game with Dethrone and Stan Humphries. Yeah, that was one of the more embarrassing Bill Cowher.
Well, they got embarrassed. They got embarrassed the next, 2 weeks later in the Super Bowl. So, like you said, they really weren't there, right? Mm-hmm. But your point is true. They actually remind me of the Steelers, this new team, because Harbaugh wants to play defense. Harbaugh wants to do all of this, but he doesn't have a quarterback who's necessarily a runner, but he does have a quarterback like Roethlisberger who can throw it. So now I wonder if this is going to mirror those Bill Cowher teams from early. Because remember, the 49er teams that Jim Harbaugh had, they had Colin Kaepernick, and they were doing something totally different. They were doing what Lamar Jackson is doing, and people hadn't quite seen it yet. So we'll see how it goes, but I do believe that he's building it the way he wants to build it, and that just happens to be a way that if you do it correctly, can be the kryptonite of the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's what everybody's thinking about. All right, man, so 2 more teams. One of them's the Steelers. I'm not going to play a clip of Chris sitting there talking about his own team, but I will play one of my man Matt Williamson talking about him. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, Chris, the biggest thing with Pittsburgh, who is another contender, and I still label them a contender, even though we don't know who their quarterback is. But when a team doesn't have a losing record for like forever, since my kids were in high school, then you never ever count them out. And I think Mike Tomlin's a good enough coach that we don't count him out. He'll have to do it with one less player, though, because they traded Mr. Pickens to Dallas. Listen to this.
George Pickens to be in a contract year, to be like, okay, you're a professional, you're getting older, you're still just turned 24 years old. And so there's a lot still to be written with George Pickens, and his career could go a lot of directions right now. He could become a journeyman and nobody wants a part of him, or he could become still a superstar number one type of receiver because he has that type of ability.
And hopefully he matures and looks himself in the mirror and says, I need to fly straight, at least for this year.
Yeah.
And clearly, receivers that the Steelers have moved on from have fallen through the floor. Deontay, Claypool, Juju, even AB. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Steelers receivers need their own like documentary film.
All right, this ain't big up on Pittsburgh Day, but it is a situation where you don't know who's going to throw the ball and you don't know who's going to catch the ball in Pittsburgh. But I'm still putting them in as contenders because I believe they have added some juice to their front seven. I think their corners are still young, but they've shown enough. And I just believe in Mike Tomlin, man. And I believe in the fact that that organization has organizational culture and belief that allows them to be a problem for anybody on a weekly basis.
So here's the thing. The Steelers are not a threat to go be a Super Bowl contender this year. They still have growing to do, but they have the power this year to be that annoying team that if you play them at the wrong time and if their run game does click, I think they could be a team that gets in your way, and then you're just like, wait, what the heck was that? Like
Denver last year?
Exactly. I think like Denver last year, a lot of people didn't see coming. And I think that whether Aaron Rodgers signs or not, I think the Steelers can be a 9-10 win team that Mike Tomlin holds that bar up so high. Like people in Pittsburgh don't appreciate it because they're like, who cares about non-winnings or non-losing seasons? Like, the streak. You know who cares about it? Owners, because they get their team. When he gets you the team to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, when you're consistently relevant, you've only had one game in 18 seasons that didn't count towards a playoff possibility. So like that's meant for something. But he's been raising a floor that's been very low for some time. This is the year, I think, for the Steelers to start raising that floor with the roster that they've been developing, with the O-line picks that they've been making, the D-line picks they've been making, the corners that they've added, like Joey Porter Jr., other playmakers like Keanu Benton. They need guys like that to step up this year. And if they do, if you start to see those guys mature, then you will see a Steelers team that's stronger up front. They've been winning mostly over the past several years because of the guys that they had put together in the court. TJ Watt dominating, Cam Hayward dominating, Minka Fitzpatrick dominating, and then the offense do it just enough and some playmaking here and there from guys like Pat Freiermuth and occasionally like a George Pickens or a Najee Harris. But if now it's more of a collective winning of the trenches, then they become that team that's not just beating you because of specific matchups that Mike Tomlin's just able to isolate so well, because that's a big part of the reason why he's never had a losing season, is because when he gets into games, he's able to isolate the matchups. And they don't always work, but so many times they get them. Like last year, you go back to Nick Herbig against the Bengals as one of the matchups that really, again, a backup edge rusher, a plan that they had saying, hey, we're going to set this matchup for you. We need you to go take out Joe Burrow. And he did. It got them a turnover and a touchdown on the defensive side of the ball. And stuff like that he orchestrates that people don't see behind the scenes. Mike Tomlin's been a master of that. But if he can get a roster that, again, is up there with the top tier in the NFL, like he did when he won a Super Bowl and went to another Super Bowl, like he had in the 2010s. The only thing with the 2010s was, unfortunately, they were injured in several of those playoff games. This is what I'm talking about with the Chiefs. The Chiefs hadn't had to go into a playoff game where Patrick Mahomes had one shoulder, like when the Steelers lost to the Broncos in the 2015-2016 playoffs. They didn't have the best receiver in football get knocked out on national television the week before. They didn't have the best running back in football get knocked out a week before the playoffs like they did in 2014, or have to rely on 5th and 6th string running backs like they did in 2016. They haven't had Ryan Shazier, their best defensive player. Like, imagine if Trent McDuffie got Ryan Shazier and paralyzed. Those are the things that happened to the 2010 Steelers. So if the Steelers ever got that roster again, they will be the force so long as Mike Tomlin's around, because he will that team's floor will be so much higher, and he will raise it even higher than that. And that's when you'll see that. This year, though, this is the building of that foundation to get there. I don't think they're a threat to the Chiefs just yet, but I think if they do the right things this year, the run game takes a serious step up. The run defense takes a serious step up. And guys like Keanu Benton, Joey Porter Jr., Broderick Jones, all those guys collectively take a step forward. Next year, they will trade up. They'll go get the quarterback that they really believe in the draft, and then they'll also probably make a couple of moves, maybe sign another wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf, and that might be the time when the real window starts back for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Real quick, give me your assessment of the Houston Texans. They added some rookie wide receivers. They also fired the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. Hopefully, they got some new offensive linemen. They took the Ursary kid out of Minnesota. They made a couple of signings. Do you think they can fix that offensive line in 1 year and get it all back, or do you think they're a team that's really scrambling for an identity?
I think that they're a team that has the quarterback that they want in CJ Stroud, but they haven't figured out what they want to do with him just yet. And if they figure that out, I think that they'll be just fine. But they got to figure out what team they want to be on offense. They got to invest in that in a collective, and that could be the mistake that misses the early window opportunity they've gotten here with CJ Stroud. I think Stroud can be that guy, but again, it's building everything. Like that's why the Steelers didn't reach at quarterback in the draft this year, right? Because if they had reached a quarterback and got like Tyler Shuck or whoever else would have been the quarterback, Jackson Dart, even if that guy turns into like a decent starting quarterback for you, you need to have the pieces in place around them to be ready to win when your quarterback gets in. That's how they won with Ben Roethlisberger. That was a big thing that the Chiefs did when they got Patrick Mahomes. They were a team when they drafted Patrick Mahomes. They were coming off of being the 2 seed in the AFC that year. And so when he was coming in, and that was 2, and then he sat for a year, and then he came in, in 2 years after that. But there was a core already in place. That's what I think the Texans are still developing. They need that core.
Yeah, man. Look, to learn about all of these teams, all of them, to make sure that we ain't miss anybody, check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Look at the team for yourself. They know the roster's upside down, and they will make you the smartest NFL fan in the world for the 2025 season. Make sure you find that wherever you get your podcast. Good show today. Talk about these teams that are contenders. I might have missed somebody. If I did, don't get mad at me. But Chris and I
know Bengals fans are like, where are we?
You think the Browns fans mad too?
I think Browns fans know what's up.
All right, man. All right, for Chris Carter, for Tony Wiggins, you guys take care. We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.